I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
Andy Burnham has presented himself as the change.
He is Starmer on steroids, and in fact he isn't even as good.
Andy Burnham is being handed the keys to Downing Street, and the British public never got a vote on it. Keir Starmer walked in with a 172-seat majority and walked out less than 2 years later, not because of a scandal or a crisis, but because 75% of the public had simply stopped believing him. So the question worth asking right now is whether Burnham is genuinely the change Britain needs, or just a more likeable version of the same failure.
Different. Is Andy Burnham more than just Keir Starmer with nice eyelashes and a black t-shirt, as Kemi Badenoch called him?
Burnham is the former mayor of Greater Manchester, the man Labour has already decided is the answer before the country has had any say in the matter. No general election, no fresh mandate, no real public debate, just a by-election in Makerfield, a photograph with running MPs, and a smooth transfer of power the British public is simply expected to accept. He seems different on the surface, but then again so did Starmer.
Chester.
I think it's a really big step to go from Mayor of Manchester to fighting a by-election to becoming the Prime Minister.
Now, before we write Burnham off as just another version of the same disappointment, it is worth being fair. People who have actually worked with both men say they are very different characters. Starmer is described consistently as buttoned up, cold and difficult to read. Burnham is the opposite.
Hey,
we have an opportunity to turn the tide, to make the country feel like it's working again.
He is warm, communicative and easy to talk to. That sounds like a small thing until you remember that 2/3 of the British public told pollsters in 2025 that they found Labour out of touch, weak and untrustworthy. Some of that is policy failure, but some of it is simply that Starmer never made anyone feel like he actually understood their life.
Economic, social or moral failings of the government under Keir Starmer, or any real discussion about what policy changes Andy Burnham may or may not bring in.
Burnham does not have that problem in the same way. His decade-running Greater Manchester produced real results. He built an integrated transport system. He created a mental health crisis response programme. When Boris Johnson tried to impose COVID restrictions on Manchester without proper financial support in 2020, Burnham stood outside on live television and refused.
I mean, it's brutal, to be honest, isn't it? This isn't a way, this is no way.
That is not the behaviour of someone who just goes along with whatever the centre tells him. That moment made national news, and it is the kind of thing Starmer would never have done, because Starmer's entire instinct was to manage perception rather than pick a visible fight.
They should not be doing this, grinding people down, trying to accept the least that they can get away with. £22 million to fight the situation.
But here is where the scepticism has to come in, because Burnham's record also has moments that raise genuine questions. In the 2015 Labour leadership contest, he ran against Corbyn and positioned himself as the centrist continuity candidate, drawing most of his nominations from the right of the party. He voted in favour of British airstrikes in Syria in November 2015, which Corbyn opposed after consulting party members directly. These are not disqualifying facts, but they tell you that Burnham, when given a choice between the safe option and the principled one, has not always chosen principle.
Jeremy Corbyn was right over Iraq, he's right over Syria, and all the Labour members of Parliament should be behind him in the lobby on Wednesday.
Then there is the 2016 attempted removal of Corbyn, the so-called chicken coup, where most of the shadow cabinet resigned to try to force him out. Burnham did not resign. People praised this at the time as loyalty. But Burnham had already told Corbyn that same year that he was planning to run for Greater Manchester Mayor, a role that required Labour Party members to trust and support him. Whether he stayed out of genuine principle or political convenience is something only he knows, but the timing is worth noting.
He's run to be Labour leader twice before, losing to Ed Miliband in 2010 and Jeremy Corbyn in 2015. 2 years later, he stood down as an MP to run for Mayor of Greater Manchester.
On Gaza, Burnham did something meaningful. He called for a ceasefire in October 2023, just weeks after the conflict began, while Starmer was still tying himself in knots trying to avoid saying anything that would upset anyone. That is a real and important difference. Starmer's handling of Gaza became one of the defining failures of his leadership, losing him enormous support among Labour voters, Muslim communities, and the broader left. Burnham breaking ranks early on that issue matters.
That is my focus, but I was one of those who called for a ceasefire shortly after the events of October the 7th, as horrific as they were, but that was the stand.
But then in the Makerfield by-election campaign in 2026, when a journalist asked him directly whether what is happening in Gaza constitutes a genocide, he said he could not judge things of that extent. This is after co-signing a letter in June 2025 demanding protection of Palestinian statehood. So he was willing to sign the letter, but not say the word. That gap between what he will sign quietly and what he will say loudly in a campaign is exactly the kind of thing that made people distrust Starmer in the first place.
The suffering in Gaza is beyond words, but we can't look away. Most hospitals have been destroyed, and the distress of people there deepens every day. UK Med, based right here in Greater Manchester, is still working on the ground in Gaza to continue saving lives and keeping the last few hospitals running.
On the economy, Burnham has promised stronger public control over energy, water, housing and transport. He has said Thames Water should be nationalised. He wants serious devolution of power to English regions, moving government offices and resources out of London to cities like Manchester and Newcastle. These are not small things, and they are genuinely further left than anything Starmer was willing to say. People who know Burnham say the devolution commitment in particular is real and deep, not just a talking point.
He's also, according to the Times, going to reduce government budgets to increase local budgets and give regional authorities much more power to decide exactly what the money is spent on. So, for example, those in power locally could decide how to spend money on welfare.
The problem is that he is stepping into a government that was elected on a cautious 2024 manifesto, and he has no fresh mandate to dramatically change direction. Farage said immediately after Starmer's resignation that Westminster was trying to crown a new Prime Minister off the back of a single by-election. That is Farage, so take it with appropriate salt, but the underlying point about democratic legitimacy is not nothing. Burnham will be under constant pressure to stay within the boundaries of what Labour was originally elected to do.
Right across the Midlands and the North, Burnham, I think, will be more astute in terms of his arguments. But I repeat the main point: I don't know what he's going to do. Is he going to put up taxes? What's he going to do? And that's why I think there has to be a public debate. And the best format for that would be a general election and a choice. And if people like what Andy Burnham stands for, he'd win the general.
There is also the question of what he will not say. He will not say, rejoin the EU, even though he supports it in the long term. He pledged during the Makerfield campaign to travel as little as possible internationally and focus inward, which sounds reasonable until you remember that Britain is currently navigating a deteriorating relationship with Trump, a conflict involving Iran, and 10 years of weakened global standing. Choosing this moment to declare yourself an inward-facing leader is either very brave or not fully thought through.
Are you in favour of rejoining the European Union?
I've said in the long term there is a case for that, but I'm not advocating that in this by-election. In fact, what I am saying is focus now domestically.
The parliamentary theatre around his arrival did not inspire much confidence either. Labour MPs were reportedly running through Westminster Hall to get into the photograph with him, many of them having declared total loyalty to Starmer just days before. These are the same people who stayed silent for 2 years while public trust collapsed. They have not changed. They are just standing next to a different person now and hoping nobody notices.
They are so desperate to cling on to their job and get rid of Starmer, who they see as an absolute loser, that they've ushered in somebody they know nothing about, what he stands for, who he is, to be their new leader. I have to tell you, it was nauseating and pitiful when 200 plus stood to get a selfie with them, all desperate to get in the photo.
What Burnham has that Starmer never managed to build is genuine credibility outside London, a track record of actual delivery, and a communication style that does not make people feel like they are being managed. Those are real advantages, and they should not be dismissed. The comparison being thrown around that he is just Keir Starmer with a northern accent is probably too simple and probably unfair.
The next day, Andy Burnham comes back over the weekend, and by Monday, guess what? Keir Starmer's standing down. Andy Burnham acclaimed as the new Prime Minister, and now we're Wednesday, and we're saying things like Keir Starmer won't resign as an MP after leaving office. It's extraordinary.
But the honest answer to whether Burnham is Starmer 2.0 is that we genuinely do not know yet, and that uncertainty is itself a problem. He has set out very little in concrete terms. The people around him are largely the same parliamentary party that enabled the last 2 years. The structural constraints on what he can do are real, and his habit of being cautious about exactly what he commits to publicly has already shown up in this campaign in ways that feel familiar.
Led to a big victory over reform in the Makerfield by-election, opening a path from MP to PM.
Britain might be getting something genuinely different. Or it might be getting the same cautious, calculating, London-shaped politics, wearing a black T-shirt and a more convincing smile. The question the title asks has not been answered yet because Burnham has not answered it. And maybe that is the most honest thing to say about where British politics stands right now.